Okay, so in our last video, we talked a little bit about how Mission Albuquerque, Grace Thrift Store, and the Sandia Church of the Nazarene came together, and how Grace Thrift Store became an extension ministry, as we call them, of Sandia Church of the Nazarene. I want to just say a couple things about Grace Thrift Store because it was so important in our founding. We had not only Grace Thrift Store there on Central, but ultimately we opened a Grace Thrift Store in the South Valley for a time off of Gun Club. We opened Revision Thrift Store up in Rio Rancho for a couple of years. And so thrift store ministry was a big part of what we did back then and the way we got in contact with our community. But ultimately, during COVID especially, we had a waning number of volunteers, especially since many of our volunteers that kept the thrift store running were elderly or more susceptible to COVID-19 during all the shutdowns and everything. And so coming out of COVID-19, it became very difficult to keep Grace Thrift Store open and operating, and that was the only thrift store that we had at that point in time. And so we made the difficult decision to shut that down. But I would say that sort of in the process of doing that, we began to develop a new vision for work in the community that sort of at first enhanced Grace Thrift Store and then sort of replaced Grace Thrift Store. And that is what we call our resource center. So the Mission Albuquerque Resource Center sort of carries or encompasses what was our food bank and still is really our food bank, but we've gone beyond food in our provision for the community, and we have on Thursdays especially operating what we call our Grace Free Store, which has essentially replaced the daily operations of our Grace Thrift Store. So we don't have a lot of furniture and big items in there, but what we do is we do have clothing items. We do have small items that might be household items that are needed for somebody that's trying to get on their feet. And we don't just sort of pile those things up and give them away, but rather we have sort of partner shoppers that walk through the store with people. And this has been a big part of our attempt, first of all, not just to focus on the funding aspect of Grace Thrift Store, which was always an issue, trying to make sure it made money to be able to cover expenses and things like that. Well, we always did provide for those that were in need if they weren't able to pay, but it was always that tension. So now there's no money exchanged in the Grace Free Store, as you would expect, but there is some dignity and relationship being built with the members of our community who are in need. So our volunteer shoppers go through the free store with people and understand their needs and kind of develop a relationship with the hope that ultimately we can get them from the place where they are now, which is a point of need, to a point where they're giving back. And right now we have volunteers also that come from one of the shelter units, the tiny homes of our city, and they volunteer and give back in Grace Free Store on Thursdays and in our resource center in general. So our food bank has also joined our resource center, and so we've kind of consolidated operations in terms of sorting all of that stuff and volunteers. It's all in the same area. We sort food, we sort clothing, we make sure that we have the resources that somebody might need that comes to us in need, all sort of gathered in the same place so that they're available. So the Mission Albuquerque Resource Center is today a very central part of Mission Albuquerque's ministry to our community.